Okay, so I publicly announced this project and then immediately took a few weeks off because other stuff got in the way. That probably won't be the last time this happens, but I'm back for now anyway. So, as you recall, when we had left off, I had a handful of premises based on the exercise in Chapter 1, and then I attempted to match each one with a genre from Chapter 2. A lot of you were drawn to the guy who thinks his barista is trying to kill him idea, which I thought might be Monster in the House, but I wasn't sure how to do that when I wanted the thought that the barista was trying to kill him to be paranoia, not genuine perceptiveness. But then I got a comment from the Grey Turtle Entertainment who suggested that the monster is the coffee shop franchise that has pitted them against each other, which actually feels perfect to me. It sets up easy metaphors for the satire, or the real bad guys, the evil corporations sort of thing. And it sets up the confinement issue. The rules Blake lays out for Monster in the House is that it is a confined space, and that the monster is punishment for a sin committed. If the real monster is a Starbucks-esque coffee mega chain, then confinement is because it's impossible to get away from them. They're everywhere. So I think I'm committing to that premise in that genre for the duration of this book. I may return to some of the other premises for later scripts. We'll see. But for now, we move on to Chapter 3. It's about a guy who, which is about characters. He talks about how characters need to give the audience someone to identify with and serve the needs of the story, and that any good logline will have adjectives to describe the protagonist and antagonist, and also a compelling goal we identify with as human beings is another thing the logline needs. On page 49, he talks about how he comes up with premises before characters and then thinks the who needs to serve the what, not the other way around. He doesn't claim it's necessarily the right way to do it, it's just his approach. But he talks about how when you have your premise, you just need to develop the character who needs to learn the lesson intrinsic in the premise. On page 52, he lays it out as the trick is to create heroes who offer the most conflict in that situation, have the longest way to go emotionally, and are the most demographically pleasing. He then goes on for a few pages about making sure you're pandering to youth-obsessed Hollywood, why fight City Hall, and I get it, this is about writing sellable scripts, not necessarily artistically honest scripts, but I do wish he had a bit more advice on how to find the compromise between personal vision and marketability, not just how to shove personal vision aside completely, but whatever, the 2 scripts he had made are 2 more than I have, so who am I to judge? He also says to make sure that your protagonist's goal is connected to a primal urge, which basically boils down to survival or sex. On page 55, he has some questionable phrasing about having the princess as the prize makes it work whether it's set in the modern-day hood or the Middle Ages. He was a middle-aged white guy writing this in 2005. What you gonna do? On page 56, he talks about not casting your script before it's sold. Don't get married to specific actors, which, yeah, don't get married to literally anything about your script if you're selling it, because everything will change in development. But he tells an anecdote here that I have a few things to say about. He writes, "The amazing Sheldon Bull and I wrote a hilarious comedy in 2004. What if the president's helicopter goes down behind enemy lines? And what if he is forced to capture Osama bin Laden all by himself? That was our premise. It's about a president who finds his inner leader. It's Galaxy Quest with George W. Bush. Great, huh? We even had a great title, Chicken Hawk Down. And here's why we did not sell that script. Because there are about 2 people who can play the part of the president. It's the lead. And there really isn't anyone out there who can open that movie. Tim Allen was our first choice. And who else? What we had done was paint ourselves into a corner on casting. Yes, it's funny. Yes, it's a great story. Yes, someday it will get made by God, but right now it just sits there. Hear the crickets? We are professional screenwriters and we should have known better." Okay, so I appreciate that he's willing to admit when he's made mistakes and admit some of his own shortcomings, but a couple things. One, about 2 people can play George W. Bush. I can name off the top of my head plenty of Bush impersonators who were plenty active at the time. Will Ferrell, James Adomian, Timothy Bottoms, Frank Caliendo, Steve Bridges. I know out of all of those, only Ferrell could maybe open a movie in 2004, and even that wasn't a guarantee, but since then we've literally had real-life movies with Josh Brolin and Sam Rockwell as Bush. And how hard would it have been to just make it a fictional president who was a blatant Bush analog? There were plenty of movies about those in that era, like that Dennis Quaid one about American Idol, and later on, Jamie Foxx played fake Obama in White House Down, so audiences are pretty accepting of fake presidents who are stand-ins for real presidents. I really don't think nobody bankable can play the president is the reason this script didn't sell. Again, I get the function of anecdotes like this, rather. He wants to share his firsthand experience in the industry, but some of these anecdotes really make me question his judgment in a lot of areas. But again, he's sold scripts and I haven't, so what the hell do I know? He then talks about how most major movie stars fit into basic Jungian archetypes, and he presents his own basic movie star archetypes. The ones he focuses on are young man on the rise, good girl tempted, imp/clever resourceful child, sex goddess, and the hunk. Some interesting gender dynamics in his archetypes, but I guess that's what makes them archetypes and not fully fleshed out characters out of the box. But then he just lists a bunch more that he doesn't flesh out on page 59. He says, and the list goes on. There's the wounded soldier going back for a last redemptive mission archetype, Paul Newman and Clint Eastwood. There's the troubled sexpot archetype, Veronica Lake and Angelina Jolie. The lovable fop, Cary Grant and Hugh Grant. There's the court jester, Danny Kaye, Woody Allen, Rob Schneider. There's the wise grandfather, Alec Guinness and now Ian McKellen. So why is he listing... it's mixed messaging. Like, he says there's finite specific archetypes, but also the list goes on. And I don't know, maybe the first were supposed to be main character archetypes and the latter were supporting character archetypes. I don't know. I'm on board with his broader point that archetypical characterization serves as emotional shortcuts so the audience knows who to latch onto. It's just not expressed in a particularly helpful way. And then he goes on to list exceptions to the rule, like movies about unlikable protagonists and ensemble pieces. He claims that finding the protagonist of these movies follows the same basic rules, and then he cites Robert Altman as someone who can take the setting and make it the main character, like in Nashville and Welcome to L.A., but he doesn't demonstrate how that's relevant to his techniques or how the cities of Nashville and L.A. count as a Jungian archetype hero who goes through a character arc. Every time he half explains something like this, it feels like he doesn't actually know how it fits into his rules, and it just raises questions about his rules, and it makes me wonder why he even brought it up in the first place. But my project here is to follow his rules, and that's what I'm going to do. But he says the final rule of thumb in all these cases is to stick to the basics no matter what. Tell me a story about a guy who I can identify with, I can learn from, I have compelling reason to follow, I believe deserves to win, and has stakes that ring primal and true to me. Would really have been helpful if he, had explained how all these examples actually count as that. If he had gone back and shown how the city of Nashville fits into these rules, but it would have been helpful to actually analyze all the examples through that lens, but he said he wasn't interested in being a teacher. But this is where he says to go back to the logline, and this is where it's helpful that I hadn't fleshed out my logline yet. See, Blake? Breaking the rules can be useful. I don't know why I'm talking to you as if you're still alive. Now taking everything we know about loglines, in the earlier chapter he said that loglines need irony, a compelling mental picture, a sense of the audience, and a killer title. And now he says loglines also need adjectives for the heroes and bad guys, and a compelling goal we identify with as human beings. So now that I'm committing to the killer barista idea, my current pass at a logline is this. An overworked, paranoid businessman addicted to a manipulative, world-dominating coffee chain suspects his naive barista of trying to kill him. I don't know if that really gives a sense of the audience, but I don't know how well the other logline examples he gave earlier did that either. I'm hoping it conveys that the tone is, dark comedy. My title ideas, I'm very bad at naming things, and so the title ideas I came up with are The Latte Slaughterer, Murder by Mocha, Death by Decaf, or Murder on the Organic Espresso. What can I say? I live for terrible wordplay. I do welcome suggestions for punch-ups. So next time we're moving on to Chapter 4, which is where the beat sheet finally gets introduced. Hopefully it won't be as long between now and Chapter 4 as it was between the previous chapter and this one, but we'll see. We'll see when I can fit this in again. Either way, until then, stay safe, everyone, and this is Dave signing off.